Hello and welcome to today's virtual briefing. I'm Greg Williams. I'm the editor-in-chief of Wired. Thanks for joining part 2 of our virtual briefing mini-series on the evolution of healthcare. A couple of housekeeping points. You can submit your questions throughout the session by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And we are recording this session, so please do let us know if you'd like a copy and we'll gladly send you one. So today's briefing will explore the future of personalised health experiences and the digital health technologies that are transforming healthcare experiences for everyone. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Maria Raad, the Vice President of Customer Digital Strategy at Janssen EMEA, Johnson & Johnson's pharmaceutical company. Maria is responsible for Janssen's business intelligence, advanced analytics, digital acceleration, and patient healthcare solutions. She oversees all initiatives dedicated to enabling business transformation, innovating for patients and customers, and developing Janssen's capabilities for continued growth in the region. Maria, welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Hello, Greg. Yeah, I'm happy to be here with you. So thanks for having me here today.
Great, delighted we could make it happen. So let's start with the big picture. Give us a sense of why you think European healthcare systems really need to accelerate the adoption of digital healthcare.
So I think we see many trends in healthcare happening at the moment, but ultimately what I can say is that healthcare is focused on people, and all our efforts are focused on getting the patients the best and the right care. But as demographics changes within Europe and the society's expectations are also changing, this requires from all of us to change also in healthcare. So on one hand, that demography is changing. Example, our population is getting older, they're aging, and they are living for longer. So with that, there are burden on the healthcare system to be able to help them to manage, for example, chronic diseases that are rising year over year. And the ongoing management of those, I call them the lifestyle diseases, is actually requiring much more resources and probably will incur a lot more costs. At the same time, life expectancy is increasing, right? So for my child, for our children, for our grandchildren, living to be 100 will be the new norm very soon. But as much as this is a desirable aspiration, it will surely put a lot of challenges and demands on the healthcare system. And the way it is constructed today, in my opinion, it will be impossible to manage that in the future. If you add on top of that, we see a lot of economic burden actually in healthcare happening with the expenditure that is growing faster than GDP the world over. And something you and I know very well, that with COVID, this has been accelerated and there has been a huge spend on public health in particular, right? So, you know, these are key trends that are happening today, but also I would say the expectations from the patients, from the physicians, who are experiencing on daily basis in their private life even, digital experiences, right? So the whole environment is becoming an on-demand type of services, an on-demand environment. All of this together, in my opinion, is driving us towards making some radical change in the way we are dealing and handling healthcare in the future.
Okay, so if I'm clear, there are 3 clear trends that we're seeing. So obviously improving an individual's experience of care, you know, improving the health of populations, so the broader impact, and also reducing the per capita costs of care. How do you think we make an impact on these 3 trends? If you could just drill down on that a little bit, please.
Yeah, so I mean, if I look at the needs of everyone in the healthcare system, because the healthcare ecosystem has the patients, the physicians, the payers, you know, all of that. If I look at them all and observe their needs, I would say there are 4 main areas for me where I see something that will make a big impact on their experience. So the first one is really that move and the shift of our mindset from sick care to well care. You know, traditionally, the models have been focusing a lot on treating illness rather than preventing it. And to give you a few examples, in Janssen, we have established an R&D function specialized in in disease interception. So that, you know, moves us away from just the product and the treatment itself to actually broadly talk about platforms and solutions and more around prevention and real-time outcome-based care. And that's absolutely critical. This is where I see, in my opinion, that data science coupled with digital technologies actually can be a huge contributor into this transformational shift, taking us away from just diagnosis and treatment to basically do prediction, interception, and then prevention. So that for me is one area, one big area and an important one. The second one, in my opinion, which relates to what I have just said, is about the broader application of data science. So it's more about, establishing those data network, harnessing that with the use of artificial intelligence to have real world evidence that actually can help us move towards an objective measurement of what value is across all therapies. Not the traditional way of looking at, for example, the survival rate, but more around the minimal residual diseases in the future. Right? So this is for me an important point, and it's fundamental to creating personalized health experience. The third one is a little bit related to that demography changes, right? People are trying to live their best life. And with the aging population, we need to manage that burden of the long-term diseases or the chronic diseases on healthcare. And we have seen, an example with COVID now. If you look at Asia Pacific, they have done it really well by simple tracking application. I mean, so you wonder, why can't we expand that and leverage it to a broader scale? So that for me is absolutely critical. And the fourth point or fourth area, in my opinion, where it's absolutely exciting new world, is actually around digital therapeutics. And that's an area that we are exploring in specifically cancer care, which can enable clinicians to actually prescribe a treatment systems that goes beyond just the pill. And that can get really very personalized so that those clinicians actually can monitor real time the symptoms of each of the patients. And more importantly, something that we often ignore or don't consider really well, is providing psychological support along the journey.
So let's talk a little bit about patients, because this is fundamentally, the important thing. How is Janssen translating this into better experiences for the patients?
Yeah, and you and I are patients, right? And you know that you might experience the healthcare system completely in a different way than what I would experience that. So we need to look at it holistically. And in our role, we are trying to think, okay, where can we add the value for patients and make meaningful interventions for them at times where this can change their pathway, their treatment pathway, or they can deviate completely their disease pathway, right? And traditionally, we would do that through the medicine. That's how the kind of the pharma industry have been evolving over the years. But I think now we are trying to step into new spaces where we basically are looking at using data science combined with digital technologies actually to help patients understand and manage their disease condition. So I'll give you a couple of examples. In Janssen, we have done that in immunology. It's a big space, very crowded. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide solutions and supports for patients and for physicians to actually manage their patients. And we have our application Care for Today that can be prescribed alongside a medicine in particular that will help to track the condition over time. But the important point about that, it's the data that can be sent back to physicians so they can track the condition of their patients, make timely intervention, tailor that patient's experience, and even more, change sometimes the treatment pathway completely, right? So for me, this is critical, and even more in cancer care, because cancer care had always been evolving around treating the disease, again, on itself, right? Mm-hmm. So the psychological burden of a diagnosis with cancer is often neglected. And I think this is where we can add to the value proposition that we bring, not just with the medicine, not just with the tracking, monitoring symptoms tools, but also with allowing psychological proper support for patients.
And what you're describing very much focuses on patients. Is what you're describing also going to improve the experiences of others in the healthcare system?
Certainly. I really, I mean, I try to think about it from a, I would say from a day-to-day life basis, right? So take a physician. I mean, your doctor, my doctor, I think they always have in mind that they are doing what's best for their patients, right? But at certain moment in time, they have also, and rightfully say, approach the new, I would say, the new advances in data science with a certain level of skepticism. Like, I mean, you are going to bring to me a treatment decision tools. How can I know it's the best tool, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you a few, I would say, evidence of why this is evolving this way. So the first thing is that the quantity of data is increasing. I mean, we are generating massive amount of data on daily basis, on hourly basis. But the quality of some of the analytics tools is also improving, right? So it's not just the data quantity, but the quality as well. So we have a strong base to say, okay, now we can start reflecting on making clinical decisions from the data, right? And so Janssen in particular is really focused on several projects to increase the access to the quality and the usability of real world data. And this is absolutely critical for making decisions in healthcare. The one particular example that I will want to pick here to the audience is about Honor. And Honor is our hematology outcomes network in Europe. So it's a partnership, because these type of projects cannot happen in the industry alone, cannot happen with one company alone. So it's a partnership of universities, hospitals, institutions across Europe. And its aim is to analyze quickly and in real time, real world data that would allow to answer key research questions with real world evidence to make conclusions and accelerate the work that it can be leveraged as a synthetic controlled arm in a clinical trial, which in COVID now in particular, we have seen the importance of accelerating clinical trials, right? So there are so many usage or applications of what we call the federated data network, which is, in my opinion, and real world evidence, is one of those, kind of underutilized resources that we have in the field.
Yeah, yeah. You just talked, Maria, about making clinical decision based on new data that we have. Is a lot of this really thinking about personalized medicine and how we best personalize at scale, as it were?
It is. So it's like, I think I'll give you a simple example. When you have so many data sources that you can bring in together, where you could analyze a specific patient profile, and basically based on longitudinal data that you have been able to see anonymously, of course, you could depict the best treatment pathway for a patient so you can get to a better outcome. Isn't it what we all want in healthcare?
Yeah.
That will, get you to a quicker outcome, one. That will lower the cost on the healthcare system because you're getting the right patient on the right treatment. So, and I think this is the way that clinicians or physicians would want to, I would say, leverage, so that they could really put a lot of focus on supporting the patients throughout the treatment or the treatment journey.
Well, clearly the pandemic has had a massive impact on healthcare systems throughout the world, particularly in Europe. I wonder, do you think that it could perhaps be a tipping point for us in terms of, we are seeing a real adoption of digital healthcare throughout the system in ways maybe that we wouldn't have had we not experienced this?
I think so. And I would hope really in the future that we all look back and say, oh, yes, COVID-19 was a turning point. To me, at least, it sounds like, condensing 3 years of changes in just a few months, right? And a few examples of that. Did you ever thought that telemedicine could actually be a good way in certain cases to deliver healthcare remotely? I have used it a few times during the COVID period. So actually, it's the best opportunity for the healthcare system to learn from those experiences. Yeah, see if you if I would say a rollout of remote consultations in appropriate context for patients who are stable on the medicine can really lead into good outcome, better patient experience, and potentially, why not, lower costs, right? So it's not just about improving outcome, in my opinion, it's also about empowering the patients, taking their preferences into consideration along their treatment pathway. And that is, absolutely can be done by harnessing the value of the ever evolving technology. And we have seen so many technologies emerging during COVID-19 with the adoption of so many technologies. But the one thing for sure is it's not about one company, it's not about one organization doing that on their own. It's a collective effort. It's a collective rally, I would say, for us to be able to achieve that.
That's interesting. I think that kind of the idea of the collective, that idea of sharing and of progress being made collectively is a really interesting one. Do you think that's something we're going to see more of as we come out of this crisis?
I think so, because there is no our scientific officer, chief scientific officer, always says no one can win the fight against the disease on their own. In COVID-19, with the vaccine programs, we have seen such a big collaboration across the globe, actually. It's not just within the industry. So I think that's going to be the way forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just looking forward, looking ahead, there's lots of organizations now are thinking about, okay, what's the world going to look like in 12 months, in 18 months? I'm interested to get your thoughts on what role you think technology can play in helping us avoid strains on the healthcare system as we return to the new normal.
It's a very good question, because I think that we already see this strain now, like in areas like cancer care. We've seen patients not able to access screening, testing, and even do not have access to their specialist. So over the last few months, and as I mentioned, telemedicine has been able to bridge that a little bit, right? And especially for the non-life-threatening diseases, this has helped for patients to get access to the care they needed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is always that certain level of skepticism. Saying, okay, is telemedicine safe, secure, effective as seeing a new doctor? And it has to be rolled out in certain contexts to be able to prove that, yeah? But our focus needs to be on helping the patients understanding how these tools are going to fit seamlessly into their journey, the treatment journey. Otherwise, we are going to burden them, to add more burden on the patients who are already fighting against those diseases.
Sure. Well, we have questions coming in, Maria, but I'd love to ask you one final question just from me. I really want to get a sense of what you think the big trends are that we need to be aware of. What's going to emerge in the next 18 months, do you think?
So I'm a big advocate of data. If you ask me, I can tell you that digital technologies is so important, but more important is the data and insights that we can collect from these digital technologies. And that will only help us to unlock the next generation of solutions for patients and physicians. We have AI and data science applications, but these algorithms are only as smart as the data that we give to them. So I hope this is the time for everyone to reflect on how can we move into a digitized healthcare world? How can we create smarter solutions so that everyone can get a better and personalized experience along this journey? And again, as I said, we can't do it on our own. So we invite and encourage all companies, startups, policymakers, patients, physicians, to actually co-create those solutions with us and to adopt them eventually as well.
Well, that's a good place to sort of finish, to get into the audience questions, because there's a question here from Andrew Fawkes, which I think is interesting, and it really touches on what you've just said, Maria. And the question is, do you think there are any international initiatives to standardize health data interoperability between different health services and vendors?
Yes. So, and Janssen is actually leading one of these projects, which is in the Innovative Medicine Initiatives project. The project is called EDEN. And the purpose of that project is to standardize, like you said, the around 100 millions of patients' electronic medical records to form a common data model that they call OMAP, so that there is interconnectivity between those data sets so that we can learn more about the patients. And this initiative is a 5-year initiative, and it's being, across Europe with consortiums of public groups, with consortia, including also partners of FPA. So those are like the big pharmaceutical companies, and that spans across 16 countries as well.
Okay, so a really big project. And a question here from Isabel van der Kier. Thank you, Isabel, for sending the question in. Maria, how do you see the partnership between big pharma and startups in the digital health, digital therapeutic space moving forward?
For me, this is very important. So I'll give you a couple of examples where we have been exploring through a call for action that we have launched in September, October this year, to actually, ask for startups and scale-ups to come to us with solutions to address some key business questions like predictive analytics, for example, like biomarkers. So those are spaces that are emerging in each of the therapeutic areas, specifically in Janssen, but more in general. I think those are spaces that's going to have huge interest to advance the experience and to allow for the care to be much more personalized. So we are looking to work hand in hand with startups and scale-ups, and there is a bigger group in J&J that is called J&J Innovation that actually works with early development programs with startups to allow for innovation to be discovered and then scaled across the business needs, I would say, in a specific therapeutic areas.
And a question from an anonymous attendee. Really, it's about data sharing. So do you think the pandemic is now going to encourage patients, encourage people in general to share their data and be more open with their data? Is that something you think we're going to see more of as we come out of the pandemic?
I hope so. I think data democratization is critical for innovation, right? I think there is always a level of, a level of concern with sharing data, but there is also a level of responsibility, I believe, with sharing data, because it's only going to lead us to get to better outcome for patients. It's only going to lead us to shape those pathways, in a more personalized way for patients. I think that data democratization will happen more, but of course there will be a certain level of, concern around the privacy that we will all need to manage and come in, with an open mind for that, with a clear intention, I would say.
Question from Alexander Clark. Thank you for the question, Alexander. We're now implementing digital twins into the process world, but see the next era of personalised healthcare as digital twins of ourselves. Is this an area that you think Janssen might explore?
Certainly, it's a long-term, I would say, ambition. We are certainly looking at implementing digital twins more on the engagement side, so on the interactions with healthcare professionals, not necessarily yet in the science and space, I would say, but that's definitely an ambition that we would like to look at over the next decade.
Okay, lots of questions about data coming in. One from an anonymous attendee. Do you think the amount of data being generated might soon be used to improve HTA processes and help to demonstrate objective value of innovative treatments?
So as I explained, I think real world data, because those data has to be used, the data that is generated has to be used in a meaningful context, right? Yeah. And to me, the leverage of real world data and real world evidence is absolutely the next steps towards value-based healthcare. So this is where you look at the outcome before you look at, you look definitely at the outcome in any discussions around the therapy, around the innovative medicine. So for me, this is where I see the immediate, but also the long-term usability of data generated and insights generated from the healthcare ecosystem in general.
And really, a final question. You kind of have touched on this, Maria, but I think it's interesting just to touch on it maybe one last time from an anonymous attendee. It's really about democratizing digital healthcare and ensuring that we personalize healthcare for everyone. You know, it goes back to that question of like, how do we do this at scale with very, very complex healthcare systems throughout Europe?
And definitely it's not easy, right? Yeah. But we've got to start somewhere. And I think this is where there are enough partnerships with externally, you know, in an intent to build that interoperability, allow for this interoperability at the pathway level. I think this is where you can create a common level that cuts across all the healthcare EMR or EHR system, because in each country, in each hospital, you have a different EMR or electronic medical record system. And you need to elevate that to a level where you can create that commonalities. And this is where we call the patient pathway platform. Yeah. There are companies out there are partners out there who are investigating on how can we do that at scale. And so the system in Germany can talk to the system in France, so that if the patient is moving along these systems, there is a huge interoperability and continuity of the treatment and on the journey of the patients. So it's not easy to be done, but there are a lot of effort to explore that.
Well, a very optimistic note to end on, Maria. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, to everyone who joined us today. Apologies if we didn't manage to get to your questions, but I'm afraid there was just too many of them coming in. Thanks to everyone watching the session for joining us. Thanks to Maria again. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please do take a look at more of Wired's virtual briefings on business, technology, politics, science, health, online at wired.co.uk. In the meantime, thank you, Maria. Thank you, everyone. Stay well, and we'll see you all soon. Take care now.